Hello,
Hello, how are you?
Hashem. How are you?
Thank God.
Good.
It's the 1 week anniversary
Of
of the
the
election.
election, yeah. A lot has happened in 1 week. Amazing
Absolutely.
how many appointments he's made.
Yeah.
Quite a difference than the first
Just
go.
so you pointed Huckabee.
Yeah, no, that was great.
He's
But
been to Israel like 100 times, he says.
sorry, yeah, I heard. I heard.
But I don't think maybe he didn't want to appoint David Friedman again because
Right.
well he was, but also maybe because of the current war, maybe have better
Yeah.
optics to have someone who's not Jewish in the United
I
States.
spoke at Beth Jacob once, and it was a lunch afterwards at Pat's that my wife and I attended. It must be about, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago.
Mike
He's
Huckabee.
pro-Israel. Yeah, Mike Huckabee. Yeah, he really is. It was before his daughter um, became governor.
Interesting. All right. Well, still good.
Yeah, no, Baruch Sherman is a national security pick also.
Yeah. Okay, where's everybody?
Yeah, I don't know. Good question.
Yeah, I already sent out an email. Tuesday, November 12th, 8 p.m.
Did yeah, yeah. And was it Mario sent out on Tzurba? Yeah, Mario.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there you go. There's Ernie.
yeah, it's democratic. Yes.
It's really incredible how they're still counting the elections. They still don't have final results.
No, no, not on the House. No.
Well, no, but no, period. If you actually look at California in terms of just what they have counted
So
in
the absentee
California,
ballots, right?
it's they still what they're like 60% done in California.
No, it's got to be more than that.
Go look.
I will. That's very surprising. I know they have the absentee ballots, but beyond that, well, why should it be? Let's see. Chrome.
Hello.
Hello. Wow. 2.6 billion ballots left to count.
See?
Shocking.
Although it still doesn't explain where were, in the election 4 years ago, it was 80 million to 75 million. 80 million Biden, 75 million Trump.
Yeah.
Paul, I need from you your name. You got to send me an email. Your name in Hebrew. Okay. Shoal Ben, whatever. Yaakov, I need the same thing for you. They're making certificates for the Tzurba, for our Tzurba Shir, and they want to have your Hebrew name, like we did for Yoredeya.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so Yaakov's email me your thing.
We'll do, but it's Shem.
Thank you. Mario, what page are we on?
35.
That's all?
135. 35 or 130?
30 or 35?
35.
We did Kiddush over Challah?
Yes, we started that last week.
Yeah.
No, we did that, and we're now using other drinks for Kiddush.
Yeah.
What was I
You
gonna say?
stopped at the.
Mario, tomorrow the daf is at 7 o'clock. So please put that in. Tomorrow night, the daf is 7 p.m.
And today you did one blood only, right?
Today we did one blood, yes.
Okay.
We're talking about Chamar Medina. That you can make Havdalah. Can you make Havdalah over beer? Can you make wine over beer? It's not explicit whether the Tanakama, who forbids reciting Kiddush over beer, forbids this even in a place where beer qualifies as what's called Chamar Medina, the wine of the province. But unlike with Havdalah, many Rishonim rule that only wine or bread may be used for Kiddush. This logic is explained by the Ritzkeyes. There are those Chachamim who hold that you can't make Kiddush using beer at all. Afalgav the Chamar Medina, even though it has the status of Chamar Medina. The Kivin the Mekachim Lapas, since there is a halacha that you can make Kiddush over bread, and Pas Metzia, and bread is available, he called him Chamar Medina. Therefore, bread is more preferable to Chamar Medina. Avalinin Avdallah Hoyel ve'ein Mavdil Lapas. But since by Avdallah you don't make Avdallah over bread, Mavdil ala Sheikha, the Chamar Medina who mistaver kavase. So that's why by Avdallah it's not a problem. In other words, according to this view, for Kiddush, it's not permitted to replace wine with other drinks, as the correct replacement in Kiddush for wine is bread. And that's the view of the Rambam as well, in Hilchos Shabbos. Medina Sharov Yena Shechar, in a province or country that doesn't have a lot of wine, like Poland. Or Poland or Russia. Did they have wine in those places? Probably not. Grapes don't grow there. Now, they probably would get imported wine from Greece and Italy and France, the places where wine grows. But in poor communities, wine was probably very difficult to obtain. But beer, which is made of hops, barley, grain, which is grown in Eastern Europe, beer was more available. And that it was considered the Chamar Medina, because the word Chamar means wine. Chamra means the wine of the province. So Medina Sharav Yena Sheikhar Aval Pishu Posel Kiddush. So the Rambam says Beferush that beer is posel for Kiddush. Mutar Lavdi Lalav Hoyel Chamar Medina. The Rosh quotes the Ri, who says that one may recite Kiddush over beer if it qualifies as Chamar Medina and there is no wine available. The Rosh himself rules that at night one should use bread rather than beer, but for the daytime Kiddush, one should recite Kiddush over a drink before eating bread. This is because one will anyway recite the bracha of Hamotzi before eating bread, and as the daytime Kiddush does not contain any other bracha, Kiddush over bread would not be recognizable. So now we understand our minig of making Kiddush over schnapps, even though it's just shahakol, because it's recognizable as Kiddush. Where if you made Hamotzi, you wouldn't know that you're making a Kiddush. He thinks that the opinion of the Ri makes sense, that you can make Kiddush over beer, where it's considered Chamar Medina. V'kach kosav Rabbeinu, the Ravan, the Mekachim al Sheikhar imu Chamar Medina, and the Rosh Yireli, Aval B'shiyach l'kadosh al Sheikhar imu Chamar Medina, Tovu yoter l'kadosh al Pas. The Rosh still says it's preferable to make Kiddush over bread. Kivan shasu'uda ba'al lichvot Shabbos. But that's referring to Kiddush at night, Friday night. Aval baboker yirish yivarach ala sheicha kodem birchas hamotzi. Make a bracha over beer in the morning prior to the bracha. The im lokein bat la Kiddush alayom. The Ravina le mikra kamo Kiddush alayla. We learned about this last week, that Kiddush Derabba, which is the Kiddush in the morning, all it is the bracha. Bracha ta'ashal lokein melch olam boi pre'agofen. Or in the case of beer or schnapps, why should we mevatel the mitzvah of Kiddush in the daytime when you can recite it over beer? The Shulchan Aruch quotes the different views, but specifically praises this view of the Rosh. And the Ramon notes that the accepted practice also follows the Rosh. There's no wine. Shar mashkin refers to schnapps. Chutz min hamayim, no water. Like we brought shitas, you should only use wine or bread. Ularosh balayla lo yikadosh al shecher elo lapas. The Rosh brought us this opinion that at night you should not use beer but only bread. Ubaboik, if you have no wine. Ubabeker yosutov lakadosh al shecher. We're talking about if there's no wine. Shivarch alav shahakol koydem birchas hamotzi. Shemivarch lapas tchila in kan shum shinui v'divrei tameh. The Shulchan Aruch thinks that the Rosh makes sense. Says the Ramah, v'chein aminik pashu k'divrei Rosh. The Mishnah Berurah clarifies that the possibility of reciting Kiddush over a drink other than wine exists only when the drink qualifies as Chamar Medina, meaning that wine is not readily available, and this drink is the standard replacement for wine. Even in this case, one should not use other drinks for Kiddush at night. In the days wine is expensive, the Mishnah Berurah writes that the common practice in his time was to be lenient in the daytime and make it on either beer or schnapps. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Shemekachin al Sheichar, v'davka b'mokum davi chamar medina, where beer is used as the common replacement for wine. Da'ainu shein yain motzi b'chol ha'ir. Wine is not available, b'shana hazu, in this year. V'ikar shtiyasanu m'sheichar, and most people in the city drink beer as the replacement for wine. Ushar mashkin, and other drinks. V'im yesham yayin, if there's wine, it should be yokim, it's very expensive. It's makri motzui. That's still considered motzui. Remain yain Yisrael motzui if Jewish wine is not available. Afal pishe yain eno Yehudi motzui. Let's say there's non-Jewish wine available. Lo mikri motzui, they say. That's not considered that it's motzui. Ula rosh uladina yesh lizor lachadchila shol kaddish balayla al shum mashke chutz min hayayin opaz. The Mishnah Berurah says, be careful Friday night to make Kiddush only on either bread or wine. Im ein yayin beer, if there's no wine. Ukilkamei da'arbe gdolei rishonim achmirim she'ena yotze bezeh. Idei Kiddush, because many rishonim said you would not be yotze otherwise. V'gam ha'machaber lo ichriya bezeh locha. The machaber wasn't definitive there. Ala pas meniach yodav alav ad gemar Kiddush. You should place your hand on bread until the Kiddush is finished. Of course, the challah is covered. In the morning, making Kiddush in the morning on beer is better than bread because of the reason of the Rosh. He says, where wine is readily available, you should make the bracha over wine, even in the daytime. The Mishnah Berurah says that in Radin, right, he lived in Poland or near Lithuania, wine was expensive. Most people in the city didn't drink wine. They drank other drinks. Even the great Rabbanim were not careful to run after wine. Where the Kiddush in the daytime is only Rabbanim, the Kulalma. The Somchin Atzman, they relied on Divrei Makilin Bezeh. But if you're careful to always make your Kiddush even in the daytime over wine, that's the mitzvah in a mufchar. So today wine is much more affordable for most people, is easily available. Yet many people still recite Kiddush on other alcoholic beverages, such as liquor or whiskey, even when wine can easily be used. What is there a basis for this practice? What is the basis? The Mishnah writes that if one prefers these types of drinks over wine, one may recite Kiddush on them on Shabbos day. If chaviv lo yain sarv, if he enjoys whiskey more than wine, yachol HaKadosh alav b'yom l'chatchila b'nasenu shehu chamar medina, because it is considered wine of the prophet. Rav Ovadia Yosef argues that Sfardim, who follow the rulings of the Shulchan Aruch, should not recite Kiddush over other drinks, even in the daytime, unless it's impossible to use wine. He derives this from the Rishonim quoted by the author of the Shulchan Aruch and the Beis Yosef. Hinei das baram Beis Yosef, the Beis Yosef, Rav Yosef Karo, commentary on the Tur Orach Chaim, B'Shem Agos Maimonides, B'Shem Rav Yah, all of these are Rishonim. Shem yesh yain, but also hegmonia. If there's wine in this country, elashu b'yoiker, but it's expensive, that does not give you a leniency to be makadosh on bread, makadosh marifta, and certainly not al sheikhar. And therefore, he says it's not good that which people in the daytime recite kiddush on beer, aval pishiyesh beer yain, even though there's wine, machma shayan biyoikim, just because it's expensive. O mishum dechaviv shechor, he likes beer. Kushta koida abach yoshev al maduchazu liyasuvi daitla minik shanagu marshal marashchan lassos came. The Bach noted that the practice of the Marshal Rav Shachna, who was the father-in-law of the Ramah, to recite Kiddush over beer, he says we Sfardim have the Moran Rav Karo, Udiyashran Smuchin Alei, and those that follow him. The only time if there's no yan, there's no wine, or if the wine is dangerous for him. If one has neither wine nor bread for the nighttime kiddush, the Shmir Shabbos Gilchosa writes that he should nevertheless recite kiddush. He should use baked products similar to bread, like pasaba b'kisnin, crackers, right? If one does not have such products either, he should recite kiddush over chamar medina. Then you can use beer. Let's say you're traveling Friday afternoon and you're stranded, or somebody who has celiac disease or diabetes. He can't consume chal or wine. Then he might have to use pasaba b'kisnin. Says the Shmir Shabbos, Ein lo yain or shekasha lo lishtos yain lo yikadish al shum mashke acher. You should not make kiddush on another beverage. El yikadish al lechem. V'amna mi shegam lechem ein lo. If he doesn't have bread, yikadish al pasaba b'kisnin. Use crackers. Dainu mine mafa machmas mine dogon. A baked good made from the 5 types of grain. Ein lo gam pasaba b'kisnin. He doesn't have that. You can drink another beverage that is considered an important drink, like beer or whiskey. You should certainly not negate the mitzvah of Shabbos. We have already seen that ideally, one should recite Kiddush over wine. Times of Chazal, it was standard practice to dilute wine with water, and therefore it was acceptable to use diluted wine for Kiddush. However, wine which is diluted too much is no longer considered wine. This is explained in the Gemara Masechta Baba Basra, which discusses the correct bracha to be recited over diluted wine. We just had this in the Daf Yomi Baba Basra Tzadik Vav, based on Rabbanon, Echad Sheikhar Tmarim, beer made out of dates, Echad Sheikhar Sa'oirim, beer made out of barley, Echad Shmar Yayin. Let's say you soak water in sediment of wine, You make a shackle. Acherim oimrim, shmarim sheyesh b'hem tam yain, the sediments that have the flavor of wine, then you make a bar piragav. Rabbi Rav Yosef Tomer Tavayu, ein halacha ka'acherim, the halacha is not like acherim. Omer Rav Kula Alma, Rama Tilsa Asar Boa, 3 jugs of water over grape. And then you're left with 4 ounces, let's say 4 ounces. Chamrahu is considered wine. Rava Tameh, Dam Rava Kol Chamra Tel Adari Al Chat Las Maya. Any ratio, in order for it to work, has to be 1/3 water. If it's more than 1/3 water, it's lav chamrahu. Rama Tulsa Vasa Tulsa.
It's
3
1/4 water, no? 3 parts water to 1 part water.
Yes, 1/4. 1/4 is from juice, which was in the grape sediments, which was pure wine. You left, so 1 out of 4 is 1/4. 3 parts water to 1 part pure wine, so 1/4. So Rama Tosa Vasa Tlasa, let's say you poured 3 ounces over the sediment and you only got 3 back. So lo klumu. Keep ligi, the Rama Tosa Vasa Tlasa Upalga. You poured 3 ounces over and you got 3.5 back. The Rabbanan Savri Talsa Ayel Tosa Nafik. 3 were absorbed in, 3 came out. Half was originally pure wine. Upaga b'shitza pagi maya v'lo klum. But then that half mixed into 6 half jugs is too weak. But v'acherim oimrim talsa plus a old train upaga nafik. That 3 were absorbed and only 2.5 came out. And then you have a half and the other half, so it's 1. So 1 with 2.5 would be considered wine. The Gemara implies that both when mixing wine with water and when pouring water over pumice, dilution by more than 3 parts water to 1 part wine negates the wine content. In the continuation, the Gemara explains that pumice diluted to this extent is considered sour water, not wine. The Ritva writes that accordingly, all laws pertaining to wine do not apply. Imazag Yosef, the dilution was more, more than 1/4, it's not yayin. Linin kiddush, linin bracha. Whether you're going to use it for kiddush, we're going to make a boy gefen. The lo shasule inish b'toras chamer, people didn't drink it as wine. Therefore, lo gazra lav linin yayin nesech, there's no din yayin nesech. The lo shaykh beim mishum chassus, you wouldn't. Yayin nesech was forbidden because we didn't want people to fraternize with the non-Jews. But it's not, there's not going to be chasnos. No one's going to fraternize over this kind of wine. Kamayim uchashav is considered like water. The kiyu ba'almuhu, it's just, it has a little sour taste. The Ramban raises the possibility that this ratio only applies to pumice. Actually, wine is more potent, and therefore remains wine even if it's diluted more. Pumice is like the grape sediments. Perhaps of actual wine, and you have a dilution. The shmorim, the sediments only have a little sourness. Doesn't really have a taste of wine. Mashen lomer can be einatzmo, but you can't say with real wine. Maybe the dilution is more than 1/4. It has the flavor of wine, has the appearance of wine. You have 3 lug water that a little bit of wine fell in. Umarian kamar yayin looks like wine. Davukachamra bezigat's diluted wine. The leniency, what we said, but having a dilution of 1 to 4, and anything more than that is considered not wine. That's only by the sediments. the Talmidei Rabbeinu Yonah write that our wines are not strong enough to be diluted so much. And therefore, even if one poured 3 jugs of water over grape pumice and the volume of the resulting beverage came to 4 jugs, you can't call it wine. This also appears in the Shulchan Aruch, who adds that the acceptable ratio of dilution is the standard ratio used locally when drinking wine. The Ramah then stipulates that the ratio can never be as much as 6 parts water to 1 part wine. Shmorei yayin, if you have sediment, mavarach aleim boi pregev. Let's say nosan b'mayim. Let's say you put water on the sediment. Im nosan shlosh midos mayim v'nimsa arba. If you poured 3 ounces of water and 4 ounces came out total, avalei kiyayin mazug. That would have the status of wine. Mavarach boi pregev. Aval yeno shalanu, but our wine, she'ein chazakin kolkach, they're not strong. Afilu ramat tlas of asarba, even if you poured 3 ounces and came out 4, eina mavarach alav boi pregev. Nira. It's based on the standard dilution of that community. However, the Ramah wanted to quantify it for us. If the wine isn't at least 1 in 6, then it's not considered. The Achronim don't understand the Ramah, as the Shulchan Aruch agrees that nowadays even 1 part wine to 3 parts is not wine. How could the Ramah say that you can go up to 1 in 6 parts? The Mishnah Berurah resolves this difficulty based on the differentiation between diluting actual wine and pouring water over these sediments, right? Divrei Agad, the words of the Ramah, ein lo beer. The Mechaber lo bala achmir. The Mechaber was machmir to say 1 in 4 is not even good enough. V'yenu shalan lo sagishe rak revius yain. Ve'afilu maderech bos maklasas meziga gdola. And even if the local custom is to make a big dilution, if it would be less than a quarter, it wouldn't work. Even with strong wine. The Ramah took it up to 1/6. How could that be? The MS, the Divrei HaOgur, which is a Rishon, lo koyal shmorim. That didn't refer to sediment. 1 in 4. The augur talks about grape wine, the wine itself, that diluting it up to 6. According to the understanding of the Mishnah Berurah, Shulchan Aruch only required a ratio of more than 1 part wine to 3 parts water when pouring water over pumice. The Ramah does not dispute this, but adds that you can use close to 6 parts water to 1 part of actual wine. The practical conclusion is that according to both the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah, one may use wine for Kiddush even if it's diluted with 83% water, which is the 6th. Other Achronim understand that the Shulchan Aruch equates pouring water over pumice to diluting wine with water, following the implication of the Gemara quoted above and the explanation of the Ritva. In both cases, according to Shulchan Aruch, even 3 parts water to 1 part wine is not wine. And even according to Ramah, using 83% diluted wine was only permitted when this was the standard practice. The Olas Talmid writes that today, as diluting wine with even a small amount of water is unusual, even diluting with any water may cause the wine to lose its status. Our wines are very weak. In this even if the amount of water is less than the wine, you have to evaluate whether that's indeed the case.
He seems to say up to 50% is okay. He says half. He's worried about half.
Half.
Yeah.
Okay, could you? No, mine is, it's very diluted.
I'll get you.
No, Susan, can you give me like a glass of tea?
Yeah.
Thank you. But Prima Garim writes that according to Shulchan Aruch above, who does not specify an exact calculation of how much water one may add to the wine, again, like Yaakov said, as long as the majority of the mixture is wine, 51%, you retain the status of wine. If it's 51% water, then it's reduced to shahakol. Today in Israel, The wine produced under supervision by the Israeli Rabbanut or other kashrus agencies generally consists of close to 100% wine, and certainly more than 50%. It's therefore acceptable for Kiddush, according to all opinions, if one does not dilute it with water. Again, if it's diluted, it would depend on what the ratio is. On Pesach, there's a whole discussion. Diluting it is better with water. I dilute the wine with grape juice. I don't know whether that's considered better or not, but based on the limud here, may be considered better. They have to go back and see what we learned about Daled Koisos there. Wine is certainly better than grape juice, but here we're going to go through the tshuvas that dealt with grape juice. This was a big issue during Prohibition, where you couldn't get wine, and you could get wine for religious purposes. That was one, and a lot of bootleggers. Unfortunately, there were Jewish bootleggers, and they had access to wine because they claimed it's being used for religious purposes. There's a whole
Great book. There's a
huh?
great book called. There's a great book. It's actually quite a scholarly work called Jews and Booze. It goes through all this stuff and how Yidden turned. They tended out to be the greatest purveyors of wine during Prohibition because they got the exception for religious
Exemption.
issues.
Exemption. Right. Yeah, but it was not to those quantities,
Right.
to those massive quantities. The exceptions were not real.
Correct. It points out that there was more wine produced as if there would be twice as many Jews in New York as there were, but
Right.
that's the way it was. Yeah.
Right.
Jews
But then
and booze. Interesting.
the question arose: can grape juice be? So today, many people use grape juice for kiddush. Grape juice is made by taking the liquid squeezed from the grapes. It's prevented it from fermenting using various chemical processes. Is there any halachic problem with using grape juice instead of wine? The Gemara Masechta Baba Basra states explicitly that one may recite kiddush over grape juice that was squeezed from grapes without waiting for it to ferment it to wine. So the Gemara Baba Basra directly says you can. Based upon this passage in the Gemara, which the Shulchan Aruch codified, the vast majority of poskim agree that the correct bracha over grape juice is bor pri hagefen, and it may be used for kiddush. Rav Vosner, the Shevet HaLevi, quoting the Meiri, who explains based upon the continuation of the Gemara that although lechatchila only fermented wine may be used for libations on the altar, the grape juice was disqualified lechatchila in the base of Midrash, but was acceptable b'di'evet. This requirement does not apply to kiddush about being fermented, having to be fermented. Let's see the Shevet HaLevi inside. Harbe shasku b'zeh. Lo ro divrei Meiri b'Baba Basra sham. So the Shevet HaLevi says that many people who dealt with this topic had missed seeing the Meiri in Baba Basra. Something that is sweet on its own, mishkar, so that it doesn't ferment. But you can make kiddush with it. Rav Vosner is pointing out that the lack of alcoholic content does not invalidate kiddush. As long as you can make bor pri hagefen. The fact that it doesn't cause intoxication, a beverage that doesn't cause intoxication is possible for the mizbeach, but it's not possible for kiddush. Ay, 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 ay. On the other hand, Rav Yitzchak Derzi writes that Rav Elyashiv told him that the bracha of boy pragefen cannot be recited over grape juice, which has been chemically prevented from fermentation. According to this, some grape juice is sold today may not be used for kiddush. Umeagon Rav Yosef Shalom Elyashiv Shamati. The einir lachalik b'zeh kloimer the kol she'ein roy liyos atayayin. If something cannot turn into wine, ein nafkamina b'zeh sheb'shah shenislos haya roy liyos. That means if something was done to this liquid to prevent it from becoming wine, just because when it was originally squeezed, it could become wine, it's not relevant to the halacha. He says, "Ine yesh mine mitzvah novim shlefi edus hayitzronim." There's grape juices that, according to the producers, noislim b'mitzvah choimer shelo yuchal litzos. They add something there that prevents fermentation. Lios yayin. According to Sinas HaMitz, Mubakbukim, before they bottle the grape juice, Motziim also Chomer Sheniten, but they remove this substance that prevented fermentation. L'chein b'bakbuk patuach yachol hamitzvah navim lafoch liyayin. An open grape juice bottle can ferment and turn into wine. V'imkein also yayin akati dami liyayin megito. This would be similar to somebody who has grape juice in his vat, which is slowly fermenting, which everybody holds. So one process in making grape juice was in the vat, they have something sticking in there which prevents the fermentation. But before they bottle it, they remove that thing. It's not a chemical that was added to it. It's like something physical in there, it seems like. And then before they bottle the grape juice, that thing is removed. So now that type of grape juice, if you left an open bottle of grape juice, it would turn into wine. As opposed to yesh mine mitzvah shal yadesh yosif aleim shmar yayin, yavchu liyayin. You have to add something like yeast in order for it to become wine. Do we have, would that need a boy paragraph or not? Most poskim agree that kiddush may be recited over grape juice, but unlike with wine, some grape juice commonly sold are already diluted with water. The minimum grape juice percentage is usually specified on the bottle. Rav David Yosef writes that this is problematic, as adding even a smaller amount of water to grape juice can negate its taste. In his opinion, even the Ramah agrees that if it no longer tastes like wine or grape juice, one cannot recite hagafen on it. Well, you'd have to dilute it a lot for it not to taste like grape juice. Uviyenos hamitzuyim is manenu, wine available in our day. Pamim rabo shafilu marov yain nechlash beyoser. Even if it's the taste of wine is weakened, tamayen achar nesisamayim. If it can't taste wine anymore, you should say shakol. You should be careful by grape juice. By adding water to it, the taste will go away. Rav Nissim Karelitz writes that again, it's totally in 51%. If there's 51% grape juice, that's enough. Mitzvah novim shemal b'socho mayim was diluted with water. Imrov mitzvah novim miyutu mayim. It would be treated like wine, and the bracha would be boy prakef. White wine. What about the din of white wine? They quoted a pasuk in Mishlei that says red wine is superior. When it gives cut, do not look upon wine when it's red. The Ramban understands from the conclusion of the Gemara, the one who recites kiddush over white wine does not fulfill the mitzvah, even b'di'evet. Chamar chivrim, mikol makom le'inin kiddush be'inin Adom. It needs to be red. Metzati b'Yerushalmi Omer Rav Yirmiyah mitzvah lotzes behind Edo. The mitzvah is to do it with white, with red wine. My timer, because of the pasuk al terei yain ki yisadam. Umashma dafilu b'diavad lo yotza. That even b'diavad it doesn't work. Dat sheben mara yain diavad. It's got to have an appearance of wine. Mitzvah lotzes diavad namihu. The Gemara dilon lav lechatchila b'lechudi dahaminah tesi. The boy krok ke'ein dechsiv leinin kiddush afilu diavad nami. Based on the pasuk, even the evidence wouldn't work. Vilo lechatchila nami kosher, and da roy v'choshevu v'oila shulchan melachim. White wine, if it's very high quality and can be served on a table of kings, what should be wrong with it? Less than the Gemara dilon lo yavivi maybe kosher leinin kiddush. The Gemara didn't bring an example of wine like that. However, the Rashbam explains that the question of the Gemara was only whether white wines were allowed to be used for libations in the base of Mikdash, not Kiddush. Those yesh b'forshim l'Kiddush lo neira. Some talk about it; it's used for Kiddush, but he doesn't think that's correct. According to this Rashbam, although the Gemara concludes that white wine should not ideally be used for libations, using it for Kiddush is not problematic. The Beis Yosef notes that the Rif and Rosh omit the question of the Gemara Bichlal regarding white wine. And he suggests that they also explain, like the Rashbam, that the question was only regarding libations. Since those halachos do not apply to they omit any mention of it. The Beis Yosef also observes that the Rambam omits this halacha entirely, both in Hilchas Shabbos and in Hilchas Yisur Mizbeach, where we would have expected them to say, oh, white wine cannot be used for the Mizbeach. Therefore suggests that the Rambam understood the Gemara completely differently, and the conclusion is that white wine is indeed valid for both Kiddush and Nesachim. Other Rishonim, such as the Rashba and the Ritva, write that standard white wine may be used. And the question of the Gemara is only if it was unusually white. The Shulchan Aruch quotes both views, but notes that standard practice is to allow the use of white wine for Kiddush. Says Shulchan Aruch, Mekadsh al yain lavan, you can make Kiddush on white wine. Haramban poslo Kiddush, afilu b'diavad. Aval mavdina alav, you can make Havdalah. Uminig al olam kisvar rishona. The minig is not like the Ramban, but it's like the first statement. The Mishnah Berurah claims that all agree that where possible, it's preferable to use red wine for Kiddush. You should try to find red wine. If he doesn't have red wine, or the red wine is not of high quality, I guess, and the white wine is of higher quality, then you can use white wine.
Yeah. Ernie, I don't understand. Grape juice is not wine. It's wine, but it's not wine. It's like we said what it is. Why would white wine be less than grape juice?
Well, at least it fulfills the pasuk of Al tirayayin ki yisadam. Grape juice doesn't have the chisaron and it's not red. That's why there were those. That's why the Ramban rejects the white wine and has less problems with the grape juice. The issue with the grape juice was the issue of the fact whether it's intoxicating or not is a psul or not. It comes out from the Rishonim that it wasn't really, the issue was not for Kiddush, it was by Yayin Nesach that they were debating that. So in the end, though, most the poskim say white wine, certainly high quality white wine, is, especially if it's of better quality than the red wine you have, it's preferable to use the white wine. I think the same halacha is by the Arba Koises. We have the same discussion there. They also want you to use red, but they also say if the white that you have is preferable. I think we have the same discussion there as well. Page 48, the Machshava. We learned above that Kiddush should be recited specifically on wine. A simple explanation for this is that wine is considered an important drink, and its use bestows the Kiddush with a more elevated status. Rav Chaim of Chernovitz offers an additional explanation in Sidur Shel Shabbos, based upon Kabbalistic ideas drawn from Rav Chaim Vital in the Pri Etz HaChaim. He explains that since wine gladdens people and brings them joy, we use it to sweeten the harsh judgment that comes from Hashem. Hakol moedim, shechiv gadol lahadir davka achrei yain sheikadesh. There's a big obligation to look for fine wine so you can make Kiddush Shabbos. Ve'atam l'shvach b'zehu. Why is it praiseworthy for somebody to do that? Me'achar sheba lahamtik esadin u'lahavcha l'rachmin. Wine comes to sweeten Hashem's justice against us and to convert it to compassion. You have to use something that makes Hashem happy and people happy. It's sweetening and removing judgments through enjoyment. We dip it in sweetness and happiness of our heart. According to this understanding, the more that we rejoice and express our happiness through reciting Kiddush properly and appreciating the role of the wine, the more that Hashem will reduce and sweeten the decrees and judgments against us during the current times. May each of us, as well as the Jewish people as a whole, merit to recite Kiddush properly, transform judgments against us, both individual and national judgments, into a sweeter outcome. Let's go to page 61. Prohibition of eating before Kiddush. We will continue to study additional aspects of Kiddush, specifically the prohibition of eating before Kiddush, the proper position for Kiddush, covering the challah, drinking from the wine, and the requirement of Kiddush b'makom suda. The halachos of Kiddush impact not only upon how one performs the mitzvah itself, but also upon one's conduct prior to fulfilling the mitzvah. In Masechta Psachim, Kuf Vav Amud Beis, the Amoraim dispute whether one who eats before Kiddush may recite Kiddush subsequently or not. The final halacha is that Kiddush should nevertheless be recited, but the Gemara clearly indicates that it's forbidden to eat. Somebody tastes something, you can't make Kiddush. But even though you ate already, you can still make Kiddush. The Gemara on the previous page, 105, records that according to the majority of Amoraim, although eating is forbidden before Havdalah, just as it is before Kiddush, drinking water is permitted. The Rambam appears to apply the same rule to before Kiddush, only forbidding eating food or drinking wine before Kiddush, but you can drink water. From the time Shabbos starts, you're not allowed to eat or drink until you recite Kiddush. V'chein b'shiyitzei hayom by Havdalah asur lo laschil le'echol v'lishtos flasus blacha ulitom klumat shiyavdil. But v'lishtos mayim in both situations is mutter, both at night and Friday night and Motzei Shabbos you can drink water. The Shulchan Aruch rules in accordance with other Rishonim who forbid even drinking water before Kiddush. Asur litom klum kodem shikarish afilu mayim. The Mogen Avram writes that rinsing one's mouth before Kiddush is not included in the prohibition. He also clarifies that the prohibition begins as soon as the time of Shabbos arrives, or whenever one accepts Shabbos, if you accepted it beforehand. It is recommended that if one may be thirsty or hungry before Kiddush is recited, one should make sure to eat or drink something before Shabbos is accepted to avoid the problem. Asr litom near a lead, shari lirchot's piv. You can rinse your mouth out. You're not doing that for enjoyment. It's a rishon. Once it's night, even you didn't accept Shabbos, and certainly in Kibbutz Shabbos, afilu mibad yom, asur litom. The box says you can't put anything in your mouth, including water. This is all repeated by the Mishnah Berurah, and the Shmir Shabbos Kil Chosa adds that when necessary, medicine can be taken together with water before Kiddush. Mi shelafi pkudat rofeh, according to the orders of a doctor, tzarich lakechos trufot zman malifnei aruchato. He has to take it before he eats. Mutar bolon, he can swallow it. Vaflish does accept mine to take a little water with it, but lo shar mashkim k'dei lakel ala bliya, to make it easier to swallow. In the unlikely event that a person has nothing to recite Kiddush over, there's no wine, no grape juice, he has no bread, he has no pas ababakistin, he has no chamar medina, or is unable to consume these foods due to illness or health considerations, but has other food, the poskim agree that he should nevertheless eat rather than go hungry on Shabbos. This ruling is recorded by Shulchan Aruch regarding the daytime Kiddush. Magen Avraham writes that the same applies to the nighttime Kiddush. However, if one expects to obtain something for Kiddush at a later hour, he should wait until as late as midnight before eating something. Mashma barosh b'tosfos perkav psachim. Do adin b'kiddush halayla. Imein lo pas. If you don't have bread, oichel below Kiddush. He can eat his meal without Kiddush. Because for makom she'en yayin, who the Beis HaKnesses is yefshel l'kadish bepaslo, and in a shul, you couldn't recite Kiddush in shul over bread on behalf of guests. Yefshel l'kadish bepaslo orchim shliach tzibur oimer brocha mein sheva. You recite the Magen Avot Bidvaro, the Yotzim Bezeh, and with that, there'll be Yotzei Kiddush. Right? We say Vaychulu, and we make a bracha there, and we say Magen Avot. You can't call Odonami Yotzei Bezeh b'masha b'kadish b'tfilah. So other people also were Yotzei with Kiddush, so you could have your meal even though I was saying Kiddush at home. We call Makom nearly the mitzvah she'avilu. You'll have food later on in the evening. Yamtin al kol porim achatzos light. Wait until midnight. Avol b'kiddush hayom ein tzarich. By Kiddush in the daytime, you don't have to wait that long. Some say you can eat even before that. You can rely on that in an emergency. Okay. We'll continue the Hilchos Kiddush next week. Any comments, questions? Okay. Have a good week, everybody.
Yeah, go ahead.
Shkoyach Ernie.
Thanks. Be well.
Go ahead.
Have a good night.